Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom. This is a brother. I'm a Roman coming back with another lesson, giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Hashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakal Kodash. As always, double honors goes out to the apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone. The leaders, teachers, and leaders who rule well, man. And peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect of Israel, pushing this word in truth and in sincerity across the four corners of the earth. Much love to you, Arkia, man. Sincerely. Yeah, man. Don't even know what I'm gonna entitle this right now, but it's a kind of as you say, it's an off-the-cuff impromptu lesson, man. Yeah. So it's funny, it's the hypocrisy of these devils, man. We're talking about Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, and his ilk. They'll turn around, especially in Babylon, they'll turn around and say things, well, slavery wasn't that bad, And there's a reason it's called chattel slavery, because it's different from what is known as, the common term for slavery, or the common definition of slavery is servitude, man. When you are indebted, or, you have to pay it, it's a form of debt payment, man. And in turn, if your slave master is, he can only enslave you for a certain amount of time, and if he treats you well during that, and you have, if you feel that's your option, you can choose to stay with that slave master, man, with your family. And the effects of that is that you're not getting split up from your family. They're not breeding you like animals, like they did in the transatlantic slave trade. But I want to get into all of that, man, Lord willing. But it's funny because, Trump had his people destroying this exhibition, right? I'm going to play the video, but they say it wasn't that bad, right? But then they're doing their best out there to destroy all evidence and all history pertaining to that era. So they are ashamed and they know it's bad, man. So they're hypocrites, man. They're always telling us to get over it. But yet, when it comes to 9/11 and World War II, the Holocaust, the so-called Holocaust, there's been worse than that. I'm going to say that, I don't care. There's been worse Holocaust than that one. And guess who that pertains to again? Our people, man. So let's play this video anyway.
Right now, controversy over the removal of a slavery exhibit at Independence National Historical Park. Today, all that's left empty bolt-holes and shadows on the brick walls where panels once stood at the president's house site. Some critics today coming to the site adding protest signs in their place. The removal coming following an executive order from President Donald Trump that specifically called out Independence National Historical Park for what the president called a widespread effort to rewrite our nation's history, replacing objective facts with a distorted narrative driven by ideology rather than the truth. Jennifer, a lot of emotion over the removal of this exhibit.
Absolutely. The community has been showing up in force and also posting protest messages, as you mentioned, all over the president's house site, expressing their disappointment, sadness, and anger. The President's House exhibit opened in 2010, telling the stories of those who lived and worked at President George Washington's home, including the 9 individuals who were enslaved. Roz McPherson is the original project director.
The site came out of protest of the black community to acknowledge enslavement in the most historic mile in the country.
On Thursday, cameras captured National Park Service workers removing the exhibit. And on Friday, even the information stand is now a blank canvas.
I was very upset. So I felt as a resident of Philadelphia, I needed to come and see what had happened.
Some brought flowers, others taking a private moment of reflection. High school art teacher Miranda Thompson brought her students on an impromptu field trip to learn about what she now calls missing U.S.
Children shall seek to please the poor. I'll just throw that in there.
History to be replaced, even when it's history that we find embarrassing or shameful.
It's wrong because it's erasure, and it's hiding our truth and is hiding our history.
The National Park Service and the Department of the Interior says it's following President Trump's executive order and says after undergoing...
Exactly. First and foremost, it's hiding their guilt and shame. You know, if you can't erase history, man, and you're going to pay for this, man. You're going to pay for what you've done anyway. So all this trying to cover up what you did doesn't make a difference, man. Because Yahweh Shem Shai is going to make you pay for this. Why? Because you messed around, and you messed around with the wrong people, man. And that was sanctioned by the Most High, by the way. But it don't matter. You're still guilty. You still did it. It's great. The Most High made you do it. He made you to be that way, and he's still going to pay.
The required review, quote, the National Park Service is now taking action to remove or revise interpretive materials in accordance with the order.
We all know it's petty, and we hope that Philadelphia sets the standard for these kinds of fights in other historic sites, because it's happening everywhere.
McPherson says there are multiple lawsuits being filed, including the city of Philadelphia's against the federal agencies. Mayor Sherelle Parker says her team is reviewing a 2006 cooperative agreement between the city and federal government.
That agreement requires parties to meet and confer if there are to be any changes made to an exhibit.
By Friday afternoon, the empty exhibits were filled with colorful protest messages.
And if you just peep this as well, and I'm not even saying it's to throw shade, but it's something you notice, that it's always the woman of our nation, the so-called black woman, that's doing all the talking, man. A lot of the times anyway. Not to say that the so-called black man, the Israelite man, is not doing that. And that's been something that's been going on for a while, man. But anyway.
Saying history is real. We have opened up in so many ways to learn all pieces of history, and this is just, I think it's setting us back.
Without black history, there's really no history.
And organizations protesting the removal of these exhibit signs are holding a virtual town hall tonight. It starts at 6:45 and will have...
Hey, that hair was horrendous, but, she's right. Really. Without the Israelite history in that country, man, that country has no history. It was built off the backs of our people, man. Blood, sweat, and tears, man. In fact, let me get a quick, because I've got to get something else on this. This is Joel 3:1. It says, I'm going to try and slip the scriptures in between, otherwise I'll be leaving them till last, man. It says, for behold, in those days, and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also go with the nations, there were all nations like it, and I will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will plead with them, judge them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and part of my land, because that transatlantic slave trade that caused the diaspora, man, right? And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. Right? That's the trading, man. It says, yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head? Because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my good and pleasant things. That's us, man. Right? There's a quote. I don't think it's proven, but there's a so-called quote from Adolf Hitler saying how America's in trouble because it's basically taking the jewels of God, man. And he was talking about us. It says, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. And we're getting raised up now, man. Right? Let's jump down. Verse 18, it says, And it shall come to pass in that day that the mountains shall drop down new wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters, and the fountains shall come forth of the house of the Lord Yahweh, and shall water the valley of Shittim. Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom shall be a desolate wilderness for the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. You know, so going back to the point that, you know, blood, sweat and tears, man. Alright? You know, they built that America and a lot of other nations, including this country, England, Great Britain, was built off, you know, those some of the biggest slave imports happened in England, man. I believe it was Liverpool and maybe Bristol, I could be wrong. And lots of imports, man. You know, remember this is the mother of America. So let's did I finish that? I think she had a little bit more to say. Let's finish what
have a link up to that meeting on fox29.com. Don and Jason.
Okay, Jennifer Lee there in Old City, thank you very much.
Oh, that's it on that. So let's read this. You know, we shouldn't focus, it says, on how bad slavery was, says Trump. Who, you know, yeah, you speak for yourself, MFer. That's what you're trying to do, man. You're doing everything in your power, man, to try and diminish and hide the truth. You can't hide the truth. And this is, you know, this happened last year, man. Trump's attacks on the Smithsonian are meant to convince us that truth doesn't matter and we should blindly accept his lies. And that's exactly what's going on right now with his administration. You know, they're doing things. In one instance, you're seeing them do things with your own eyes, and then you cut to them in their little conferences and, you know, their news conferences and with the reporters and that, and on the CNN and the Fox News and all that other stuff, and they're telling you another thing, but yet you've seen it with your own eyes, man. So they're taking people for a joke. It says Donald Trump's critique of the Smithsonian Institution for its focus on how bad slavery was might seem like a joke, except that, like so many of the ignorant, mean-spirited and flat-out racist opinions and directives issued by the White House over the last 6 months, it's not even remotely funny. What makes it even more absurd and disturbing is that the president and his minions, J.D. Vance, the vice president, sits on the Smithsonian's board, are determined to micromanage the exhibits and wall text on the view at the 21 museums that operate under the Smithsonian's aegis, and to replace the truth about history of unifying and constructive descriptions. Among the proscribed images are a picture of the former NIAID director Anthony Fauci, one of the president's perceived enemies, and a photo of immigrants watching fireworks through the gap in the border wall. I'm just trying to see if there's any quotes I can get real quick. Right, let's read this part. It says to whitewash, pun intended, history to prevent students and museum goers from learning the truth is not only a grave insult to black and indigenous Americans. That's the Israelites, man. You know, all of them. You know, the Gadites, the Reubenites, the Ephraimites. You know, the Judites. You know, it's basically taking a piss, man. it says, so it says, not only a grave insult to black and indigenous Americans, but a problem for all of us, because the fact is that the past explains the present, and without history there is no way of understanding how we arrived at the current moment. So look, I'm not going to read all this, but you know, if you want to get into it, you know, it's here, The Guardian, there's the title right there, we shouldn't focus, you know. Let's read this. So this is what the definition of what we went through is. It's called chattel slavery, and it says chattel slavery was an exceptionally brutal system that reduced millions of human beings to legal property or chattel, stripping them of all rights, dignity and humanity for over 400 years. It involved systematic violence, including forced labor, brutal punishment, sexual exploitation, and the separation of families, creating profound, lasting damage to individuals and African societies. Here are the key aspects of how bad chattel slavery was, and you know, obviously, side note or disclaimer: we're not Africans, man. We're Israelites who fled into Africa after the sacking of our city, man. You know, by the Romans. So it says total dehumanization and ownership. Enslaved individuals were treated as commodities owned completely by masters who could sell or trade them at will. Their children were also born into slavery, continuing the cycle. Extreme violence and brutality. Enslaved people were subjected to constant severe violence, including whippings, branding, and torture. Slave owners used terror to maintain control, with many enslaved people being lynched or hanged. Horrific mortality rates. The Atlantic slave trade was devastating. Roughly 20% of enslaved people died during the forced journey across the Atlantic. On plantations, particularly in sugar production, high mortality rates were common due to brutal conditions. Systematic family separation. Families were frequently torn apart, with spouses, children, and parents sold to different owners, never seeing each other again. And before I finish the last 2 points there, you can understand as well, this was built on race. Now we know really it was a spiritual thing, but to them it was built on race because they looked down upon us because of our skin colour, man. That's what they thought. Alright, you know, I'll say that's what they thought, but ultimately it was in the spirit, because they're Esau, Edom, and they have a hatred for us. Alright. Sexual abuse and exploitation. Enslaved women were frequently subjected to sexual assault and abuse, and the men. So let's not see, even GPT is trying to cover this shit up, man. You know, they was doing it to the men. The butt breaking that was happening. You know, let's not forget that, man. Lasting impact on Africa. The slave trade devastated Africa, losing millions of young people, worsening conflicts and destroying communities. It's estimated that the trade created a massive long-term economic disadvantage, causing a significant portion of income gap between Africa and the rest of the world. Well, that's true, because, you know, just aside, you know, disclaimer again, we're not Africans, but it's true in the sense where you've got nations, the so-called white people, building their wealth for free. Basically, it's 100% profit, because you're using workers who aren't getting paid, man. You paid, you know, because let's be truthful, they did. Some of us were sold into it, man. Some of us were captured, and some of us were sold into it. But when it says Africans sold Africans, no, man, because we're not African. Let's see if it comes up with anything else. Have I spelled that right? Atroz. No, that's not right either. Let's see. Let's just check the spelling on that. Let's get it right, you know. Atrocities. Cities. Alright, that's it. I should know better than that. Anyway. Okay, we've got a couple more things here. So we got force breeding, medical. I'm not going to read this through more. Medical experimentation, psychological torture, denial of literacy and identity, social death, medical pathologizing of resistance. So there's a, you know, at least he goes in, but there's still plenty more, man. You know, alligator bait. You know, we said the butt breaking, the tearing of fetuses from the wombs of mothers. You know, forcing incest between family members, and the list goes on, man. So these devils, man, have got so much shit to pay for. It's unreal. But let's read, man. Let's read. Time for the scriptures, man. Time for the cutting. You know, that two-edged sword, man, double-edged sword. Right, this is Amos 1 and 11. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever." And that wrath is showing right now with the way that he's doing. Trump is doing all this ICE business, right? And not only that, the way that they're trying to cover up the truth, man. You know, and you can't expect to get away with this. You cannot expect to get away with this, man. No way. Let's get something else. Let's go to where is it? Let's go to Habakkuk. Let's go to the 2nd chapter, man. It says Habakkuk 2 and 4 says, "Behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith." And that you know, that's talking about Esau, Edom, and they ain't right. All right, they're off. Right? It says, "Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people." It says, "Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his, how long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay." You know, and we read this 2 and 12. It says, "Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood, and establish a city by iniquity." That's him, man. That's what he did. He built his whole city, his whole land, on the blood of the Israelites, man. Woe to him that giveth his neighbour drink, and puttest thy bottle to him, and makest him drunken also, that thou mayest look upon their nakedness. And look what he's done with the whole industry of the music industry, putting these idiot jakes out there, promoting all that wickedness with the drugs and the pimping and the gang violence and the whorish behaviour and all of that. Yeah? It's made our people drunk with folly, man. Right? So not only has he done all the slavery stuff, but after that he's done all that other stuff, the red line and the Jim Crow, the destruction of our people, the getting the father out of the households to weaken the family unit. You know they have, when it comparable, I don't know the numbers exactly, but comparable when it comes to generational wealth, we literally have nothing, and the Edomites always have things to pass down. It says, thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned unto thee, as shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. Right, and let's get, man, we used to bring this one out on a regular back in the day, man. It's still relevant, of course, but that spirit of shitting on Esau on the streets is kind of, it's not really in that spirit right now. Revelation 13:9 says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. That's, let him understand, man. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And the saints are who? The Israelites, man. I'm just gonna get a couple more presets, man. Let's see. This is Isaiah 33:1. It says, woe to thee that spoilest, and thou wast not spoiled, and dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. When thou shalt cease to spoil, thou shalt be spoiled, and when thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, they shall deal treacherously with thee. Yeah, man, it's all going to turn on your heads, man. It says that in Deuteronomy 30th chapter, that the curses are going to come upon you, man. Zechariah 2:7, I'll read from it. It says, deliver thyself, O Zion, that dwellest with the daughter of Babylon. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, after the glory he hath sent me unto the nations which spoiled you. For he that toucheth you toucheth the apple of his eye. For behold, I will shake mine hand upon them, and they shall be a spoil to their servants, and ye shall know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me. So, basically, the Lord is going to make them pay, on our behalf. And he's going to use us, let's get that. He's going to use us, man, as well. So we get to enjoy. Yeah, and I said enjoy, man, because we can't wait to get our hands on these devils, man. And we're going to get our hands on them in the kingdom. They're going to understand what it's all about, while we never stop talking about it. This is Ezekiel 25:12, and it says, therefore, it's like jumping down my eyes. I need glasses when I'm doing this, really. Thus saith the Lord, verse 12. Just saith the Lord Yahweh, because that Edom hath dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and have greatly offended, and revenged himself upon them. Therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I will also stretch out mine hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Teman, and they of the Dan shall fall by the sword, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel, and they shall do in Edom according to mine anger and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, saith the Lord Yahweh. So, I mean, look, imagine having the Most High as your enemy, man. I mean, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. I mean, you're done. You're cooked. Finished. And there's no getting out of this, man. I quoted it. The scripture says, he will seek, the children shall seek to please the poor. Yes, we saw them Edomites in that video, all crying and shit, putting their hand on the display that was no longer there. That means nothing, man. At the end of the day, if you're Edomites, they might not all have been Edomites, but if you're Edomite, you're finished, man. It's that simple. But yeah, man, I'm gonna, there's so many scriptures you can get on this, but I'm gonna close out, man. It's getting late. So yeah, Lord, when this is edifying anyway, man. This hypocritical demon has to pay, man. They can't keep getting away with this, and they won't keep getting away with this, So I want to give you praises on the glory to Yahweh Shem Yahushai, Bahashem Kakodash, man, and Shalom to the next one. Shalom.